Hello and welcome to Up Front, where we talk about public affairs and interview the leaders in our community. And I'm really happy to welcome the Chief of the Victoria Police Department, Manak, to our program. He's been acting Chief Constable for some time. He was appointed Chief in June of this year. It's the first time in 26 years that Victoria has a Chief promoted from within their own ranks. So first of all, welcome, Chief Manak, and congratulations.
Perfect. Thanks for having me, Daphne.
We're going to talk later about the interesting perspective you have as opposed to some of the chiefs of the past, but because you have grown up in Victoria. But first of all, let's talk about the awkward and somewhat difficult time over the last 2 years since former Victoria City Police Chief Frank Elsner was being investigated for alleged workplace misconduct and harassment. It must have been an incredibly difficult time to lead the team here at VicPD. How did you handle that challenge?
Well, there's no question it was a distraction because the front pages and all the media coverage was around the Chief Elsner's investigation and conduct. But I think the approach that I took and our senior command team took was one of focusing the membership and the department back on what was important, which is delivering the excellent service to our communities. And so we really took the approach of it was out of our hands as to what was happening with the investigation, but what we could do is we could take ownership about what we were doing in terms of engaging with our community and making sure that we were responsive to their needs, and we continue to be responsive.
Mm-hmm. Now, social media questions that we had coming in over the last while were asking about the Chief Elsner situation, so thank you for answering that. The other ones, no surprise, were all about the issues that are confronting many of us in the community, which is the rampant use of drugs, the opioid problem, the fentanyl problem, and from that, addiction, homelessness. There's so many issues, but we can't lay it at the feet of police only, and I know you believe in collaboration. So how do you intend to approach these issues as we go forward, and how have you been doing already?
Well, one of the things I think that's important is that the police are community leaders. We are out in the community 24/7, so we get to see firsthand, right into the alleyways, under the bridges, in our parks, what is truly going on. And also, when we respond to calls, we actually go into people's homes and assess what is happening in their lives. And what we try to do is look at the root cause of the problem. And it's really important that the police are engaged and that we are connected to service providers. We work closely with Island Health and our other partners, including the court system, because enforcement is only a small part of what the police department does. A lot of it is maintaining social order and connecting people to the different services and supports that they require.
So you've been already working with a lot of the service providers. What do you think the answers are?
Well, I mean, first off, it's complicated because even though we talk about collaboration, we still, to this day, continue to work many times in our silos. And this is not finger pointing to any one agency, but I think we can still be better when we work together. And it's something that I'm committed to, and it's something I know that our communities are committed to, which is how can we be more efficient and effective? And the way I look at it is how can we be patient-centered? How can we be client-focused? So the person who we're trying to help gets exactly what they're looking for, regardless of what service it is that is the primary need of care.
From an observer's point of view and a citizen's point of view, I see some actual inroads being made here. Is it true? Is what we are seeing when some people look at the situation in Victoria saying it's getting worse, do you see it's getting better in some ways, the treatments and the social service agencies and your work?
I believe that. I truly believe that we are going down the right road. We have made significant inroads where we are believing that in being collaborative and working together makes a difference. And so we are finding that we have information sharing protocols, we are able to share information, talk about certain people, and making sure that, again, that they get the supports that they need.
So let's talk about that criminal element. There's a certain percentage that you'll always be dealing with, which is a criminal element. But much of the work that police are doing now is far beyond that. Many people say police are really just social workers. How do you see the character sketch of the police now, today?
Well, I think police are many things to many people. And we are, by default, the people that get called because the fact that we're working 24/7. The good news for the community is that the people that are responding to the calls for service are officers. They're competent, they're engaged, they're empathetic, they're very compassionate, and they're good problem solvers. So the initial thing is you have to be able to assess what you're dealing with and then be able to decide on what's the best course of action and what we're going to do, which is why when you'll hear me talking in the public, I won't talk about the crime rate. The crime rate is very seldom related to our demands on our resources. It's calls for service. It is all the social order and maintaining, many of the things that we are dealing with, as you kind of mentioned earlier, it's maintaining social order. So they're not actually criminal in nature, but the police get called because people don't know who else to call. And we are good at connecting people to the supports and services that they need and helping people.
Yeah, actually, excellent networkers is what you are.
Yeah.
I attended one of the engagement sessions. You were present along with many of the other senior command members in James Bay. And I saw that. I saw the empathy, and I saw exactly what you're talking about in terms of engagement. People really communicating and talking about what their issues were. And even in that room, as the engagement session was happening, there were problems already being solved. So does that ever feel like a waste of time, though, because you're not doing hardline police work? You're doing more networking?
Yeah, I think that in policing, very seldom is there anything that we do a waste of time. There's always a benefit, and I think that to engage with our community, that particular session was one of 4 sessions that we held to engaging our communities, to learn a little bit more about what their expectations are, and also to share the results of our community and business survey that we had recently completed. But I think that anytime that we're out in the community and engaging, and it's not just the police chief or the senior command team, it's all police officers when they're engaging with a community, you're learning more about what they're feeling, what they're seeing, what are some of the challenges, and we're able to then adapt our response to make sure that we remain relevant and that we're committed to providing the best service that they expect.
Out of those 4 engagement sessions, Chief, was there anything really surprising?
I think what was surprising was the constant theme that I heard where the public is asking for more foot patrols, more police visibility, and a greater presence. Because people really were commenting that they felt safer when the police were around. Not necessarily that we engaged with them, but the fact that they saw officers, whether they're riding a bike or whether they're walking the beat or whether they saw them in their neighborhood or at a community event, that made people feel safer, and it made them feel that they were a part of a larger community.
That's a key takeaway message. And we're going to take a brief break and be right back. We're back with Chief Del Manak of the Victoria Police Department. And Chief, you've often talked about your pride in the members of the Victoria Police Department, specifically that the department has earned a reputation as a very progressive and innovative police service. So give us some examples of that.
Sure. So when we first learned about the opioid drug overdose crisis and we were starting to respond on a more regular basis to overdoses, the Victoria Police Department responded quickly, and in fact, in the province of BC, we were the first municipal police agency to equip our frontline officers with naloxone, which is an antidote for overdoses, and making sure that we were able to assist people and help them prior to the ambulance arriving to take them to the hospital. Other things that we've done is bait bikes. The technology is such that we saw there was significant success in bait cars. Bikes now can be upwards of $5,000 to $10,000. People are investing in them, and for many people, it's their only mode of transportation. So what we did is we used technology with GPS trackers and whatnot, and created a bait bike program. So we now deploy bait bikes into areas where bike theft is prevalent, and we're actually catching people stealing bikes, many of who are prolific bike thieves.
Wow, that's a major step forward because there's so many bikes in the capital city.
Right.
It's a real biking capital. And I have to say, during this program, we'll be giving information out about the Bike ID program too.
It's a bike registry program.
Yeah.
It's fantastic.
Let's talk about priorities, because from this very, very strong and dynamic police department, how do you figure out the priorities? There's so many, I'm sure, and tell us about some of them, please.
Sure. So the first thing when it comes to priorities is, again, it's important what our community tells us. That's why we've had our community and business survey. That's why we've had our community engagement sessions, because I want to hear from the public and our community, what is it that matters to them? I want them to set the priorities for the police department. I think I know where we need to be focusing our efforts on, but again, I want to make sure that there's no disconnect. So some of the areas are maintaining social order downtown. We have a vibrant downtown. It is fantastic. There's thousands of tourists that come. There's business owners that are running their businesses, and many people come to work and play downtown. So we want to make sure that from a policing and safety perspective, that the downtown is welcoming, that people feel that they can come, their car's not going to get broken into, they feel safe and secure. So that to me is one of the priorities, which is why we're trying to enhance our foot patrols and our bike patrols and have that kind of visibility and that welcoming atmosphere downtown. Other areas for priorities are also helping our community, working with those who suffer from mental illness. We have people suffering with addictions. There's a large segment of our population that is marginalized, which is why we created a mental health strategy. So a strategy that has a philosophical approach on how the Victoria Police Department will approach people with mental illness and how we will support them and how we will be focused on their needs and their care over enforcement or anything else.
Back to fentanyl. There is a series of videos available through VicPD, is there, on fentanyl? Or
Yeah.
is that an internal education process for members?
Yeah, so you asked me earlier about innovation. So here are our frontline police officers coming up with an idea to create awareness and to talk to the community about fentanyl. So we've got a 7-part series online about VicPD fighting fentanyl, and it takes everyone through the early stages of identifying the problem and tracking an individual who's dealing in fentanyl all the way up through to the arrest. And that series is available online at vicpd.ca.
Thank you. I want to ask you, Chief, about the Victoria Police Board, because obviously they're very, very involved providing oversight and governance to the department. Can you challenge, I'm sure you do, perhaps at times, challenge the priorities, the goals, the objectives that are set by the board? And is it a comfortable relationship? It appears to be.
Yeah, it's a comfortable relationship, and it's a very important relationship because the board have an important role that they play in providing governance and oversight over the police department. So what we do is we work together with the board. The police board doesn't set the priorities and tell me as a police chief what we're going to do. I mean, this is a discussion and dialogue that occurs. In fact, the police board was at each of the community engagement sessions. So they're a part of the process, which I think is really important. So we're always working together. And again, the needs and expectations of the community are first and foremost. And that's the marching orders that are set as to what priorities we establish.
I mentioned earlier, it's the first time in 26 years that a chief has come from within the ranks. There must be a great sense of pride for you, but for the members as well. Does it set a tone of confidence and also recognition with the members and yourself?
Yes, absolutely. It's been very humbling. The number of emails, text messages, and letters that I've received internally and externally. But from the membership perspective, I think they appreciate that the fact that there's internal leadership. I've come up through the ranks at the Victoria Police Department. I've hired more than a quarter of the staff that are working here. And I think that goes a long way in establishing trust and establishing the lines of communication.
And you're a hometown boy who went to George J. Elementary. When we come back with Chief Manak, we'll find out where it all started, police work, and also your deep connection to this community in many ways. Thank you. I'm with Chief Del Manak of the Victoria Police Department, and we've heard that engagement and collaboration is very high on his agenda. But what started it all? When were you first attracted to police work?
Yeah. Well, I think as most kids growing up, you're attracted to policing, fire department, and that's kind of where it all started for me. But I will tell you that I really felt strongly as I was growing up and I was deciding on what career I wanted to pursue. I really wanted to help people. I really, truly, from my heart, I'm a people person. I like to engage with people. I like to talk to people. And I really saw policing as a very honorable, respectful career. And I really felt it was a calling and a job like no other.
And the work ethic came from your mother, it sounds like.
Yeah, so my mom and dad immigrated here from India many years ago. I was born and raised here in Victoria, but the strong work ethic was always, work twice as hard as the next person, don't complain. I started working at the age of 13, delivering the Daily Colonist and the Victoria Times, and worked my way up in anywhere I've worked. I've always had a strong work ethic, and I think it's paid dividends.
And in terms of balance and family life, you still maintain that. I was sneaking around the police department talking to some of the members saying, what's this guy really like? And they were saying, we don't know how he does it. Like Chief is 24/7, you're on all the time. You coach sports teams and you've got a great family life, it sounds like. So how did you manage? How did you learn that work-life balance?
Yeah. I think it's a challenge. I think as you move up through the ranks, you really have to consciously be aware and making sure that you're not forgetting about your family as you're pursuing your career interests. But I really find that I try to make time. I try to engage with my kids. I do coach soccer. I've coached hockey. I've coached baseball in the past. But I find being out and engaged and in the community is where my heart's at. Mm-hmm. And my family support me through that. And a lot of times when I'm going to the community events, I'll actually take my family with me. So now they're a part of the event instead of I'm doing it separately on my own.
Well, that's a great technique.
Yeah.
So you were at George J. when you gave a wonderful speech to the kids and said, basically, you can be anything you want to be, which was wonderful advice. You had a few other pieces of advice, and one was laugh and play often.
Yes.
Do you think you follow that advice?
Yes, absolutely. I really feel that you have to be real. In life, I think you have to have self-deprecating humor sometimes, but to always see the lighter side of things. There'll always be stress. There'll always be challenges and roadblocks that you have to deal with and navigate, and politics that come to play. But you always, I think, have to stay true to yourself, and you have to make sure that you're laughing along the way and that you are always keeping things light and within the right mindset. And I think that actually builds support from your team, and I think it's a great sign of leadership.
Can you tell me about the leaders that have inspired you? I know you went as an example to the FBI Academy. It sounds like that was a pretty amazing experience.
Yeah, so I'm always, I'm a student of leadership. I'm actually currently doing my master's at Simon Fraser University. I believe in continuous learning, continuous improvement. You mentioned the FBI Academy, so I had an opportunity to go for 10 weeks to Quantico at the FBI's National Academy program, where I'm a graduate of. There was over 200 leaders from across the world, and to sit and share ideas and do reports and do projects. There's an education component to the FBI's National Academy program, was once in a lifetime experience. And now I have contacts across the world, and we're able to share stories about some of the challenges that we face in law enforcement and how we engage with our communities and how we can be better when we're engaging and being responsive to our communities.
Fantastic. Now we're going to hear about some responses from people who've lived in other cities when we come right back with Chief Del Manak of the Victoria Police Department. Community surveys have been carried out by the Victoria Police Department, and no surprise, there have been a lot of people taking advantage of that process, which is terrific. One fellow who lived in, I think, 12 different cities had a great comment for you in this survey. Tell us about that.
Yeah, so his comment was that he had lived in 12 different cities around the world, and that he found that the members of the Victoria Police Department were the most empathetic, compassionate, and responsive officers that he had ever seen in those 12 cities that he had lived in.
So you said earlier you hired almost a quarter of these people. I mean, the pride must be there for you, but there's training that is required. People are not necessarily born to be that kind of empathetic person. So does that carry on all the time, this instilling this empathy with the members?
Yeah, it does. You know, you hire the right people with the right skill set and the right competencies. And I think that if you have a strong culture in your police organization, a culture that is based upon being honest with people, being empathetic and compassionate, and understanding what truly their needs are, then I think that you're setting yourself up for success, and you're going to get comments like this one resident had commented on.
So professionalism, I would think of as well, integrity. There must be a number of very important qualities.
Yeah, we have our core values. You know, we talk about respect. We talk about professionalism. One of the messages that I give to the members when I go around and do my chief's briefings to each of the sections is that details matter. It matters to me how our officers are looking. Every single day, people are looking at our police officers, whether they even talk to them. They're looking at how they, you know, are they professional? Are they friendly? Do they look like they're approachable? And to me, that's very important.
So far, how would you rank everybody in the department, 1 to 10?
Yeah.
Pretty high?
Yeah, I would give it a high 9. I would say that I am very proud of the men and women who work in the Victoria Police Department, including our civilian staff that work here. They're committed, they're engaged, and again, I'm challenging them to always be, you know, continuous improvement, continuous learning, and always try to strive for excellence.
Excellent. Now, one of the most difficult aspects of running in a police department in a city such as this, or anywhere for that matter, is to be cost effective. I guess that's the challenge. How do you do all this work and increase excellence as well as be sustainable and cost effective?
Yeah, so that's always a challenge. It's always a challenge because we provide so many things to so many people. So, you know, if you look at mental illness, and you look at the closure of hospitals and the savings that governments have made where people are now on the streets, or there's more community-based programs and outreach that's required, well, that's all fallen to the police, including additional policing standards where what used to take an hour or half an hour now sometimes can take 2 officers 6 hours or 8 hours to complete. So there's higher standards, there's higher expectations, which mean that there's more demands and community expectations. So the constant challenge is, how do we balance that? How do we balance that with the community's request for what they're looking for from the police, but our ability to actually deliver? And those are constant conversations we're having with our police board and with councils during budget years.
And many of us have heard about the issues with court time too, which is another big subject, but I'm sure in the collaboration and the engagement you're talking with all kinds of people in law enforcement about that system.
Yeah, there's new systems in place now where the courts actually have the officer schedules in mind. So when court's being scheduled, they're trying to schedule court in and around the availability of officers, so there's not overtime that needs to be paid.
That's a major improvement. How about the style of delivering service, Chief? I wonder if you could talk about that, because police work has changed quite dramatically over the decades.
Yeah, it has. And I think that the most progressive police agencies, and I put the Victoria Police Department right at the front of that, have to be able to know and be responsive to monitoring crime trends, knowing what's changing, and to be able to adapt accordingly and not miss a beat. And I think that takes skill. It takes a lot of foresight and a lot of looking at national trends, international trends, where crime is going. So where it's going now is significantly, we are looking at cybercrime. We're looking at malware, identity theft, ransomware, where people's computers are being locked out for them to pay a sum of money to get their own pictures and data back. Well, we, I think, moving forward, need to be far more progressive and to be able to meet the demands when people are calling us and they don't know what to do because they're going to lose the contents of their computer. How do we engage with them, and how do we help them, and how do we further those investigations?
Is there a growth as well in sophisticated crime and sophisticated criminals? Because we're growing, the city is growing.
There is. I think with social media and with technology, there are no borders. It's not just in the Capital Regional District, but a lot of times we're finding we're having to talk to our police partners across the world to further investigations and to identify suspects that live nowhere near the South Island.
Mm-hmm. I want to thank you for your openness throughout this interview. It's been really good to meet you and find out more about how the world is within the Victoria Police Department. Just want to end on a couple of light notes.
Sure.
So did you watch cop shows when you were a kid?
Who didn't? Of course.
Were there favorites, and did they actually shape your idea of who police were?
I think you get a false sense of what policing is, because it's really a lot more about interacting and helping people, and nothing can be done in 1 hour as it's portrayed on TV, even in the shows. But I mean, I enjoyed watching the old Hawaii Five-O's, the Mission Impossibles, Chips. Who doesn't like Chips, right? With John and Ponch and stuff, right? So yeah, so I mean, I did watch those shows, and I continue to watch the odd police show now.
Yeah, and is your stress relief the balance in your life? Is that where it comes from? Your family life, coaching sports?
Yeah, I find that when I'm coaching, I can forget about policing, and I can just engage with a team and kind of lose myself in helping and mentoring other young athletes and whatnot. And I also find that I'm active. I run, I swim, I hike.
That's great.
And when I take that time out, I think that's very helpful for me to kind of recharge my batteries.
Terrific. Well, thank you so much for your time, Chief. I know it's a busy, busy place. You have a very, obviously a very extremely busy career. So thank you for your
Daphne.
time.
Thanks for
Great
having
to
me.
see you.
Thank
We
you.
hope you've enjoyed this edition of Upfront. Join us every month when we talk to the leaders in our community. Bye-bye for now.